You know why Rumi and Gino's romance works? Because it's not about saving each other, it's about seeing the worst parts of yourself in someone else and still choosing to heal and grow. It's messy, it's unresolved, and above anything else, it's just honest. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful. Honestly, I don't think anyone would have predicted that an animated movie about K-pop singers fighting demons would become such a huge hit in essentially just a matter of days. And for a very good reason. This film is basically everything that those of us who love animation have been begging for the last half a decade. An original story with likable characters, catchy songs, and a message that resonates. It's not a groundbreaking story in itself, I would even say that it's actually quite formulaic, but my god, the things that this movie does well are just so good. It's just a solid movie where every element works and adds value to the overall watching experience. And the fact that people are going crazy over the story just proves how tired all of us are of constant remakes, sequels, and live-action movies that have replaced new and original content almost entirely. I'm obviously not speaking for everyone, but I think that I do speak for many when I say that I expect more. And we deserve more, we deserve new characters and new stories. And there are clearly many passionate and creative people who would love to give us these stories, but they are never picked up by the studios because they're just too busy chasing after easy money that comes from soulless remakes and profiting off of people's sense of nostalgia. And K-pop Demon Hunters is not like that at all. It's an original story that's fun, visually stunning, and emotionally grounded. And I think a big contributing factor as to why it works as well as it does is the romantic arc in this movie. In this video, I wanted to take a look at Rumi and Jinu and dive into what makes their relationship so powerful and why the fact that it never fully reaches its full potential is exactly what makes it resonate. What separates Rumi and Gino from most other romantic relationships is that they don't really get a romance, at least not in the traditional sense. Their relationship never progresses past, well, technically it never progresses past being just a crush. And it's strangely refreshing and also incredibly rare to see a film that acknowledges its narrative limitations and still manages to give us a meaningful emotional arc. So many stories skip the actual build-up and expect us to believe in this instant soulmate-level love. It's actually so common that we have an entire trope called insta-love that describes these kinds of relationships. If you've never heard the term before, it's basically a storytelling trope where two characters fall in love so intensely and so fast that it comes off as a plot device rather than a natural and believable progression. This trope is actually widely criticized and generally seen as poor writing because it just skips all these actually compelling elements of a believable romance. And honestly, it often just feels incredibly rushed and forced. Like the kind of romance that happens because it has to happen for plot-related reasons and not because it makes sense for the characters or adds nuance to their character arcs. What's funny is that K-pop Demon Hunters actually acknowledges the existence of this trope and even makes fun of it in the introduction scene, where Rumi and Jinu meet for the first time. We get all these things used to convey the love at first sight kind of attraction, where Rumi is left positively speechless when she first sees Jinu. She's just totally blown away by how handsome and charming he is. We get the whole deal, the music, the dreamy background and lightning, even the slow motion. And then it all crashes down as soon as Gino opens his mouth and the spell breaks. When you think about it, this scene is actually our very first indication that this movie is about to subvert our expectations. Because so many times when we talk about romantic arcs in stories, the movies just seem to skip this entire build-up that's necessary for a convincing and compelling romance. And I actually really appreciate that K-pop Demon Hunters doesn't do that. It also doesn't try to act like this romance is some grand be-all and end-all love, and the only thing that saves the day. And don't get me wrong, I'm aware that Jinu's final sacrifice is essential. I'm not trying to minimize it in any way. In fact, I'm going to talk about it quite a lot later in this video. What I'm saying though is that Rumi and Jinu both are allowed to be their own characters outside of the romantic arc. This arc adds nuance and depth to their characters, and it doesn't distract from what's really important. What I like about this movie's writing is that it managed to find a kind of balance and pull it off in a way that just makes sense for both the characters and the story. So yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about it all and to do a small deep dive into what makes this specific relationship so unique to the point of feeling a lot like a breath of fresh air. First of all, I think a huge appeal of this ship comes from this enemies to lovers dynamic, which many people generally find very compelling in fiction. Enemies to lovers ships have historically been known for having huge fan bases. They just really seem to work for a lot of people. And honestly, what's not to love? It's fun to see two characters connect despite all the surface level differences they seem to have, and to watch them make some hard decisions like going against the culture and beliefs they were raised with to be with the other person. It's a very interesting dynamic to explore, especially since the enemies aspect on its own introduces the conflict into the story and makes the stakes incredibly high. It allows the writers to ask their audiences some thought-provoking questions and to explore the characters' motivations in ways that truly make you think about what makes them tick. When done right, enemies to lovers trope can truly elevate the story and challenge the status quo in ways that honestly not many other romantic tropes are capable of doing. I think what's interesting about the way K-pop Demon Hunters deals with this trope is how it forces Rumi and Jinu to look deep within and challenge these things they believe to be true their whole lives. Meeting each other and connecting on a more personal level is a pivotal moment for both of them. It allows them to question their past and reconsider what they actually want for their future. But at the same time, it doesn't erase all the doubt and fear that they lived in for so long. I think what largely sells their dynamic is that by knowing each other, we see a more human side of both of them. Their bond humanizes them. And at the same time, it doesn't necessarily fix them. They still have to do the work on their own, individually, but it is the push that they both needed. Rumi spent her entire life thinking that she's broken and that her life won't start until she and her friends seal the golden honeymoon and her patterns are gone. She represses her true nature, and that leads to so much shame and guilt that she nearly loses sight of what's important and ends up pushing away people who truly love and support her. And Jinu carried 400 years of guilt over abandoning his family and couldn't move on because he believed that unless he erases his past, there's no future for him. The relationship feels very organic. It makes sense for them to connect and to see a piece of themselves in each other. It doesn't erase their pain, but it does reframe it, and it gives them the courage needed to make things right. What matters from the viewer's point of view, though, is that none of it comes out of nowhere. The way their relationship is written makes their connection grounded in shared insecurities and emotional trauma. And that's what makes it feel real. It makes sense too, because people naturally gravitate towards those who have similar backgrounds or experiences. We are very social creatures and we naturally make connections and look for safety and validation in others. And all the bickering and playfulness we see when they first meet also helps. It makes them very endearing and it allows them to be more than just their trauma and suffering. Even though Rumi is this almost godlike demon hunter who balances a successful K-pop career by day and slays demons by night, she still feels incredibly relatable. And that's not a small feat. Making a character like that feel grounded when her life is so far removed from our lived experiences, it's hard, okay? It's not easy to pull off something like that convincingly. And I think the same goes for Jinu. He's a centuries-old demon who can outsmart gwi-ma himself, but at the end of the day, he's just a person who made a mistake. And honestly, it's the kind of mistake a lot of us would probably also make if we were in the same position. We all have weaknesses and moments we are not proud of. It's not difficult to relate to someone who fixates on one of his mistakes. We are all guilty of doing that at some point in our lives. What makes Rumi and Jinu resonate so strongly is that the parts of them that really matter, like their fears, regrets, or insecurities, are rooted in something that's deeply human. They can be silly, they can be vulnerable, but that's what makes them feel real. That's what makes them so easy to root for. On top of that, I also find it interesting how the movie is very intentional about the way the relationship never really gets to be a real relationship. We have all these elements of a typical romance, like attraction and meaningful bonding scenes, but they almost feel like they exist specifically to highlight that their story is left unfinished. It's even reinforced by the fact that we never get a kiss between them, even though there's all this build-up for a scene like this. If anything, this movie goes out of its way to make the audience believe that this big kiss is coming, that it's just meant to be, and then it just never happens. And we know for a fact that there was supposed to be an aquarium date scene that got scrapped at some point during the writing process of this movie. So again, it's very intentional. The kiss was supposed to happen. And I would argue that the fact that it doesn't is a good thing. It adds nuance, it makes the relationship feel more real. Because the truth is that the tragedy of Rumi and Jinu's relationship is that it ends before it could even begin. It's a very nuanced relationship, and what makes it unique is the fact that it's defined by the lack of the conclusion that we grow to expect. The movie doesn't try to convince us that what Rumi and Jinu shared was something unbelievably deep, or like it was some kind of soulmate-like bond that would magically fix everything all on its own. They still have to make some hard choices to get there, and they come at a cost. The big happy ending happens, yes, but it doesn't happen the way we expect it to happen. What's more is that we don't really even know if they were actually meant for each other. We believe they do, we have reasons to believe that, but the movie itself decides to leave us with unanswered questions. And it works precisely because it shows the tragedy of how little time they had together and how they never got to truly explore what it means on their own terms. All of these things that their romantic arc lacks, like the kiss and a typical happy ending, actually help to elevate the movie's message and make it more powerful. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it's the first movie to ever do that, or like it's some kind of totally original and previously unexplored idea. But the reason why it works is because it plays with our expectations and pre-existing knowledge of how romantic arcs typically play out. It's not some kind of huge plot twist that changes everything, but I would still call it a twist. A very effective one. Because we can all relate to that feeling of loss of something that could have been more. All of the elements of a great romance are technically there, just waiting to result in a predictable happy ending we all expected to happen. But all these other outside elements are working against the characters, and what we get to see at the end of the day is the unexplored potential. And this unexplored potential makes the message so much more meaningful because it shows that the sacrifices that had to be made to get there mattered. Rumi and Jinu connected on a very human level, that's true, but the tragedy of the relationship is that it couldn't really become more, and what we end up essentially mourning is the potential they had, the fact that they could have been so much more if given a chance. The problem with a lot of popular stories is that romance is often just the B-plot, meaning that there's no time to develop it properly. And as a result of that, we end up with the characters basically skipping all the stages from attraction and jumping straight to what's supposed to be this pure and stronger than anything kind of love. I'm so incredibly glad that K-pop Demon Hunters doesn't do that. Instead, it prioritizes characters and their journeys. And just because we don't get a typical happy ending, it doesn't minimize the character arcs in any way. I really don't think the ending would be half as satisfying as it is if the writers took a more traditional approach and the movie ended with a big Disney-like kiss and all the characters gathered around cheering. Would it be nice and kind of cute? Yes. Would it make for a good ending though? Well, yes and no. In a sense that, yeah, it would be a nice ending, the kind of ending that no one really minds. But it would still feel rather predictable and honestly kinda cheap. And with K-pop Demon Hunters, there is no kiss, no grand declaration, no confirmation or a happy future. It's not your typical soulmate story. It's a story about what could have been, and that's what makes it feel so authentic. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to imply that we didn't get a happy ending. Yeah, I'm fully aware that for all intents and purposes, K-pop Demon Hunters has a happy ending. It did come at a cost though. Jinu still has to sacrifice himself, and it's thanks to that sacrifice that the ending we got feels actually earned. It is a happy ending, but it's not this picture-perfect happy ending where everyone survives, everything is magically fixed, and all the hurt and pain of the past is just totally erased. And that truly helps to ground the story in reality, to make it resonate better. It's undeniable that the connection was there, that Rumi and Jinu could have been this grand romance that ends with a magical, world-fixing kiss and happiness all around. But instead of that, the writers focused on the connection that was broken too fast, long before they could truly explore what that means. No matter how you look at it, we all have these relationships that we wish would have ended differently. We know how it feels to wonder what could have been and to think about all the possible what-ifs in our lives. We've seen so many romantic subplots that rush into true love without doing the groundwork. K-pop Demon Hunters avoids that trap entirely. It focuses on the early stages like attraction, connection, and recognition. And then it kind of stops. And it stops because even though their arc is very important to the story and its progression, this story isn't about romance. It's about connection. It's about growth. And that's okay, because what they had still matters. It's an essential part of the story and its message. Jinu's arc especially wouldn't land the way it does without the sacrifice he makes at the end by giving his soul to Rumi. His redemption had to be earned, not given to him just because he happened to fall for the protagonist. And he chooses it, but he does it for himself, not for Rumi. He does it not because she saved him, but because she inspired him. That distinction matters. It allows both of them to be fully fleshed out characters who have agency and whose individual choices are given the importance they deserve. Neither of them feels sidelined in favor of the love story. I like how organic this ending feels for them and how it helps the story rather than taking away from it. And like I said, it just makes sense for the character arcs, especially Jinu's, whose arc would feel incomplete if it wasn't for his final sacrifice. His mistakes and shame are human, that's true, but a happy ending without any reflection on his part would feel cheap and leave too much unsaid. It would feel like he did it for Rumi's sake, and that would be a huge disservice for his character and what he's supposed to represent. It also helps that it was made to be entirely his decision, a way to do the right thing where he was too cowardly to do it before. Jinu's biggest flaw, the one that he needed to overcome, was his selfishness and his sense of self-preservation. So by sacrificing himself, he finally stops trying to escape his past. After a lifetime of feeling ashamed and dealing with overwhelming guilt, he had to face it and take responsibility. Not because someone demanded that of him, but because he's learned from it and truly changed for the better. And we also know that it wasn't an easy choice for him. It's not something that comes easily to him. Just because Jinu feels human and is easy to relate to doesn't mean he's always likable. In fact, one of the most defining moments of his character is the betrayal scene that follows soon after 3. He not only sabotages Huntrix during their performance and destroys Rumi's only chance to seal the golden honeymoon, but he actually does it in a way that hurts the most. And the thing is, he doesn't do it in a burst of rage or by accident. Even though gwi-ma is absolutely manipulating him, this is yet another choice that he makes, and he's very calculating about it. And then later on, when Rumi confronts him, he's very non-apologetic about it too, to the point of trying to justify himself and acting like it was the only way. And it's not just the betrayal itself, but the way he goes out of his way to hurt and humiliate Rumi, to take away her support system and her sense of pride. The scene when Takedown starts playing and you can see the terror on her face is honestly anxiety-inducing. It's actually brutal. She goes from the highest high to the lowest low in a matter of seconds. One moment, she's achieving her lifelong dream, surrounded by friends and supporters. Her voice is back and she's stronger than ever, fully convinced that this is it, her happy ending, finally within reach. And then the next moment, she's being betrayed by everyone she's ever loved, and her greatest shame, the one she went so far to hide, is exposed for the whole world to see. And the animators did such a good job portraying the absolute devastation of this moment. There's just not coming back from something like that. What I specifically love about this part of the story, by the way, is that it doesn't frame Jinu as this unredeemable villain, but it also doesn't excuse him. We understand why he betrays Rumi, and his characterization up until this point makes it easy to see where he's coming from and why he has a hard time trusting her when she says that there's a way for both of them to be free. His betrayal isn't romanticized. In fact, the movie goes out of its way to show just how horrible what he did was. We see Rumi ready to give up everything as a direct result of his actions. In the end, Jinu sacrifices himself when it's clear that Rumi might get defeated by gwi-ma, and he does it by giving her his soul. It ends up being the final push that she needs to win and create the rainbow honeymoon. Like I said, what I really like about this ending is that Jinu doesn't make that decision purely out of love or even for Rumi's benefit. He makes this choice because he sees all the damage that he's responsible for, and through seeing Rumi's own choices, he sees that it's possible to own your mistakes. He can still do the right thing and prove both himself and gwi-ma wrong. He can be selfless when it really matters, and he doesn't have to allow his past mistakes to define him. It was Jinu's own actions and his choices that earned him that redemption, not some idealized love. Rumi is essential for that redemption, obviously, but she serves as a sort of catalyst rather than the solution. Because the truth is that he's seen Rumi hide her patterns, he's seen her lie to her friends, he's seen her at her lowest, totally defeated. But she still came back to face her past mistakes. And in the end, she manages to win by deciding to finally stop running away and hiding. It's by allowing herself to be honest and vulnerable that she can move on, even if it's painful. Something therapy allegory, anyone? Okay, I guess it's a good moment to talk about Free, which is basically Rumi and Gino's big romantic duet, because I find this song and its role in the story quite interesting. It is a romantic song, but it doesn't really feel like one, because instead of focusing on romantic feelings, it mostly emphasizes how they connect and find support and understanding in their rather unlikely friendship. So, yes, this song's purpose is to solidify the nature of their feelings, but it still focuses more on the fact that by knowing each other, they became better people. It's through her connection with Jinu that Rumi begins to find her voice again, both literally and emotionally. He offers her a space where she doesn't have to perform or hide, where her feelings are heard and validated without judgment. He encourages her to be honest, to open up to her friends, and to stop carrying the burden on her own. And in return, Rumi helps Jinu confront the parts of himself he spent centuries trying to forget about. She shows him that by facing your past, no matter how painful, it is the only way forward, and that gwi-ma erasing his memories doesn't really fix anything in the long run. And sure, it takes Jinu some time to truly break free from gwi-ma's influence, but that shift begins during Free. That scene isn't about instant transformation, but serves more as a setup for everything that's going to happen later, a setup for Jinu's redemption that I already talked about. What makes Free so compelling, both as a scene and as a song, is that even though it's this intimate, emotional connection between two people on opposite sides, it doesn't pretend like everything is suddenly okay. Instead, it's what puts them on the path of healing and redemption. They still have to do the work though. Them getting to know each other is important, but it's not a magical, oh yeah, everything's fixed now button. As much as Jinu wanted to bury the past and silence gwi-ma's voice in his head, deep down he had to stop running and actually face what he'd done. And the same applies to Rumi. If what it sounds like is her big epiphany, then Free is what makes this epiphany possible in the first place. She had to reach the point where she has no other choice but to stop hiding. In Free, she gets close to that by opening up to Jinu, but the truth is that on its own it simply wasn't enough, and sometimes it has to get worse before it gets better. There are no instant solutions. And on top of that, even though Free is clearly framed as this big emotionally charged moment, and yes, one with romantic undertones, it still leaves room for interpretation. If you want to, you can technically choose to read the relationship as platonic. I mean, the romantic cues are there, sure, but the movie never forces it. It gives both characters space to grow on their own, outside of the love story. And that's a refreshing change when you compare it to how romantic arcs are often handled in other movies. A lot of the time, one character ends up feeling more like a sidekick, someone whose main job is to support the protagonist's growth and cheer for them from the sidelines. And that's not necessarily a flaw. Not every story has to develop every character equally, and sometimes the romance is meant to be just a subplot. But I really appreciate how KPOP Demon Hunters avoids that trap. It doesn't rush into a full-blown romance or force the characters into declarations of love after only knowing each other for... Honestly, I don't know. The timing is a little confusing. It could have been anything between 2 days and weeks or even months. But yeah, regardless of how long it was, my point is that they barely knew each other. And the movie reflects that by showing us what's essentially just the beginning stages of a relationship. A mutual crush more than anything else. Rumi and Jinu are clearly drawn to each other, but they aren't really in the position to act on it with everything that's going on. That's what makes this relationship beautiful, but in a tragic kind of way. I have to say that the older I get, the more I respect stories that know when to stop. The kind of stories that don't tie everything up in a neat bow, but instead leave you with just enough uncertainty to keep you curious. And not only was that a great choice from a storytelling point of view, but it also worked by making people even more invested in these characters and this world. People immediately started speculating about a potential sequel, and Netflix even already expressed interest in releasing more stories set in this universe. They even hinted at stuff being in the works after seeing the movie's success, which is huge because we know for a fact that no one really expected this movie to end up being as big as it is now. Suddenly, Netflix and Sony are literally scrambling to turn it into a massive franchise and make as much profit as possible. It would be almost funny, but it is actually kind of sad how there was no marketing for this movie until they realized that they could milk it after it already exploded and became a huge hit. I actually found about the existence of this movie through a friend, which is a shame because I try to make a point to keep up with any animation related news, so Yeah, I'm very interested in the potential future for this universe. The potential is definitely there, but even if it ends up being just a one-time thing, I'm definitely glad that it's getting the recognition it deserves. That said, I think this is a good moment to finish this video, so thank you for watching, everyone. If you made it this far, please know that I truly appreciate you. And as always, I'm very curious about your thoughts on this topic. Did you enjoy Rumi and Jinu's relationship, the way it was written, or do you wish it ended differently? I would love to read your opinions, so please remember to leave a comment and consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel if you liked my little analysis. Honestly, I think reading the comments and connecting with you guys is my favorite part of this whole YouTube experience, and I love seeing your opinions and insights. They often help me see different perspectives and are just a lot of fun. Also, I know I've been missing in action for a while, and that's because well, mostly because I've been dealing with some personal stuff, was very depressed for a while there, and also decided to continue my education this year, which, well, it truly derailed a lot of my plans in unexpected ways. I'm happy to say that I have just one more exam ahead of me though, and very soon I will be done. I'm really looking forward to that and hoping that once that's out of the way, I can dedicate more time and attention to this channel. Also, I would love to make more videos about K-pop Demon Hunters in the future. I think this movie really saved 2025 for me. Just the story, the music, everything about it is so genuinely fun and refreshing. I enjoyed it a lot, and if there's anything you would like me to discuss in more detail on this channel, please let me know in the comments and I will definitely consider that. And if you somehow made it to the end of this video without watching this movie, I do urge you to give it a try because it deserves all the praise it's been getting. I really hope this movie will be a wake-up call for the executives who keep pushing live-action remakes down our throats just to make easy money instead of giving us new stories and new worlds to connect with. But I am definitely not holding my breath. The last few years have been hard for those of us who are fans of animation, with constant cancellations and unoriginal, soulless remakes. I hope it changes and that the success of this movie in particular will serve as a reminder that original stories can still make money and resonate with people, but yeah, I know better than to get my hopes up. I would rather be pleasantly surprised, I guess. Okay, no more yapping. Again, thank you so much and I will see you in the next one.